Dear listeners, we are back once again with a story written by Ronald Burns. If you enjoyed Ronald's story, be sure to explore more of his works on Amazon. We've included links to his stories in the description box below, so you can easily dive into his captivating storytelling. Also, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell notification icon. Now let's get on with the story. I'm Phil, a fourth grade school teacher. I love that my life has no danger and little excitement. I used to thrive on danger and excitement until my fiancée Rain's accident many years ago that changed everything. It transformed me. I built a shell around my heart. But that had just recently changed back to something approaching normal. I was now in love with my live-in girlfriend Rita until I learned that she cheated on me. I wasn't some kind of vengeful lunatic until she made me one, and I took some crazy, almost suicidal chances to get my revenge on her, but it was absolutely worth it. Many years ago, I worked my way through college as a mechanic, or wrench as we were called, at a Kawasaki motorcycle shop in Las Vegas. I used to race on weekends on formal track races. Sometimes my friends and I would go out the desert with CB radio-equipped observers to help us avoid the police and open up our superbikes to speeds around 150 miles mph. It was an incredible rush. The only rider who could come close to catching me was my red-haired girlfriend, Raina. I was pretty good and thinking of becoming a professional racer. I already had some sponsors lined up. Then my girlfriend Raina died in a motorcycle accident. A drunken woman in a hurry ran through a red light the wrong way down a one-way street and crashed head-on into Raina. Raina was on her way to the wedding planners. She had just left her doctor's office where she learned the wonderful news that she was pregnant with our child. It broke my heart, and it took years for me to recover. I gave away my Kawasaki ZX-11, which I called Shockwave. To my friend Gary, life lost all joy for me. I couldn't fall in love again, or even feel joy for years. I gave up my bike and tried to block any thought of motorcycles or love from my mind. I never spoke of my cycle history to anyone and wanted to avoid it completely, but fate had other plans for me. 3 years ago, Rita Ryer, a motorcycle cop, wrote me a ticket on Sunset Boulevard in Brentwood, a suburb of Los Angeles, when she took off her helmet and her long red hair framed her face. I fell in love once again. I called her Red Rider. She laughed. It was the best illegally U-turn ticket I ever received. We discovered that we were both tennis fanatics, and that was our first date. She was hyper-competitive, an absolute killer on a tennis court, and beat me soundly. Her limitless joy at my defeat should have been a warning. I, however, play a long game. We played every Saturday afternoon, and slowly, my game improved, and we were about even, and I felt satisfied that she was no longer the dominant player. Only then did she tell me that she had played on the University of Nevada's tennis team, where she was their star player. Her parents named her Rita, after the red-haired actress Rita Hayworth. Hayworth was as famous for her many lovers as she was for her acting. I ignored this red flag for a redhead at my peril. I asked how she became a motorcycle cop. She explained that she grew up on the back of her dad's motorcycles after her red-haired mom ran off with some guy and all of her dad's money when Rita was 12. When she turned 16, she had her own cycle. In fact, she'd never owned a car one passionate night. Rita hinted that she and her father used to be intimate after her mother abandoned them, but she quickly denied it. I had met him and could believe it. We dated for a month, and then we've lived together ever since. I guess I have a thing for chicks on bikes, especially if they have red hair. I never told her that I used to ride and race. What would be the point? Female. Motorcycle cops are a special breed in a traditionally all-male occupation. She had a rule to never date another cop, though all of them tried before we lived together, and some even afterwards. All of her friends are cops, and at their parties they sometimes snickered at me because while she has a traditionally male job, mine is traditionally female. This often happened between the third and fourth bottle of whiskey, where emptied, I learned that a lot of cops can be real a-holes and also alcoholics. Though it came as no surprise, the two AS often go together. I wore a knit sweater to one party, and some idiot named Butch asked me if I knitted it late at night in my bed. No, I answered your wife's bed. He was about to hit me, but two other cops stopped him. The taunting didn't bother me, but I could sense that sometimes it got under Rita's skin and she looked at me differently. After these get-togethers, we were at a party at the home of Tim Cassidy and his wife. Everyone calls him Butch. Cassidy and he loves the nickname all the cops were talking about, the illegal midnight motorcycle races on the LA freeways. They had all been assigned to a task force along with some helicopter officers to find and stop those outlaw riders. The local newspapers were raising a stink over these dangerous road bandits, and the LAPD had to quickly and successfully respond. I went inside to use the bathroom and observed Butch's police walkie-talkie charging in the kitchen when I returned outside. Everyone was laughing and looking towards me. Butch asked me if I ever rode, and I lied and said no. I guess bikes are too macho for a school, he said. Then he really poured on the put-downs. He said it was clear who wore the pants in my family. Everyone, including my wife, laughed with him, and at me he kept going. I guess you're too afraid to ride a motorcycle. I think your wife has more balls than you do. I was furious that Rita didn't stand up for me. That was my first hint that something was wrong in our marriage. I quickly answered that having a motorcycle between your legs isn't what proves you're a man. But I guess if that's all you can brag about, what's down there, it says a lot about your size. He was the only one who didn't laugh. He pushed me hard with his right hand to my chest. I grabbed it and twisted it behind his back until he cried out in pain. I could arrest you for assaulting a police officer. He said no, I just defended myself against a drunken prick. I responded, and probably a small one at that. Rita and I quickly left. She was furious with me in the car, saying that I blew everything out of proportion. So, defending that a-hole, I said I have to work with these guys and you have to understand their macho sense of humor, but I guess that hard. When you just work with women all day, perhaps it's rubbed off on you. That was the moment when I realized that she had no respect for me. I was crushed. Respect is the water that makes love grow like a flower that blooms in a garden. Without respect, love dies like a flower in the desert. Things went downhill after that. Intimacy slowed down, and so did her normal affection. I thought that if I was patient, things would soon go back to normal. Then 2 weeks later, she returned home and ran into the kitchen with a huge smile. In the interest of diversity and equity, she was named to head the task force to stop and arrest the renegade motorcycle racers. Her career depended on succeeding at this goal. In their bid for some good press, her superior went out on a limb, assigning the job to a woman. Sometimes the bikers rode in alleys too narrow for police cars, so they had to be followed by high-speed motorcycles. She was proud of the assignment, and that was all she talked about for a week. Her squad was equipped with brand-new laser speed detectors which were better at tracing a small vehicle like a motorcycle than radar was. I was happy for her when I said we should go out for a nice dinner. To celebrate, she declined. She and her team were having dinner together to celebrate, and she said I wouldn't be comfortable there. She began working a lot of overtime, especially at night. And I thought it was because that came with the territory. Of her new job, I didn't suspect that she was cheating on me. I not only loved her, I trusted her. 1 week later, I received devastating news. My longtime friend Gary reached out to me. He was dying of cancer and wanted to say goodbye in person. He was married to my sister, Len Gary, and I met on our first day in Paul Riv Middle School in Pacific Palisades. We looked at each other in amazement. We looked like brothers, almost twins. He now lived in Las Vegas, and I was on the next plane there. As his wife held his left hand, I held his right hand as we talked about old times and my late girlfriend Raina. I told Gary about my situation with Rita. He suggested a possible solution. He still had my old bright red ZX-11 in his garage. I had called it Shockwave. He wanted me to take it back and impress R with my riding ability, I guess. Enough time had passed since his death, and I agreed with him. 3 hours later he died while his wife and I held his hands after his funeral. Lynn gave me the bike with its paperwork and accidentally included his driver's license before I rode it back to Los Angeles. I didn't tell my wife the day of my arrival, or of the bike. I wanted to surprise her. I had forgotten how much I loved riding and racing. Motorcycles, I felt more alive than I had in years. I pushed open the helmet visor and felt the wind on my face. I was in heaven. The bike was capable of about 150 miles per peach, which I had done many times on it in the past. I was still rusty, so I never took it over 80 on I-15 back to LA. Well, not for the first hour or so. I reached a stretch of highway where I could see for miles in both directions and determined that there were no cops or billboards for them to hide behind. And I opened her up. I've never done heroin or cocaine, but they can't be more exciting or addictive than a triple-digit ride on a responsive motorcycle. Shockwave was as responsive as a passionate woman in love. I was in nirvana. Later, at a much lower speed, I split lanes on the LA freeways and raced between bumper-to-bumper cars. Then I parked it in a garage I rented, which was a few blocks from my apartment. I also stored my empty 1964 Mustang convertible there. I didn't want to take Shockwave home until I cleaned all of the accumulated dust and road grime from it. Before I surprised my wife with Shockwave, I walked home to discover Butch Cassidy leaving my house and passionately kissing Rita goodbye in that instant. Everything in my life changed. I didn't need to divorce her because we weren't married. I could have just left, and maybe that would have been the smart thing to do, but I needed her to feel at least a portion of the pain that I felt after Raina's death. It had been so long since I let a woman into my heart, and now this betrayal, of course. I placed Wi-Fi cameras throughout the house to record them. I discovered that they were quite inventive. She did things at his insistence that she would never do with me that hurt. When I had enough evidence, I removed the cameras. I heard them call me less than a minute because of my supposed fear of motorcycles. I noticed a half-empty bottle of bourbon on the nightstand. Rita didn't drink very much. When we first met, this was new. Each night when she returned from work, she drank herself to sleep. Despite my protests, I hatched out a plan. I didn't register the bike, so it couldn't be traced back to me. I bought black rubber panels to hide my bikes. Red color, and since they were rubber, they would absorb a certain amount of radar before reflecting back a signal. It was sort of a poor man's stealth coating. I added an infrared light bulb to my front headlight and a switch to toggle between the incandescent white bulb and the infrared bulb with a white headlight on. The cops could easily track me, but with only the infrared light on. Unless they were infrared goggles, I was invisible. I also put an infrared shield on my helmet to slide down so I could see the road illuminated by my infrared headlight. I chose not to use night vision goggles. They distort depth perception, and that's very dangerous on a bike. You think something is far away just before you ram into it. My penultimate piece was to put a relay on my license plate so I could hit a switch and it would flip up and not be visible. The final piece was to add a laser scrambler to prevent being clocked by the lasers Rita and the helicopter pilot would use to prosecute speeders. After I tuned the engine and added all the kit I wanted, one more device, and the opportunity presented itself the next weekend. My wife and I were again attending another barbecue at Butch Cassidy's house. He called himself the Grill Master General, and to be fair, he was pretty good at it when no one was looking. I swiped the police walkie-talkie on his kitchen counter along with the charger. I went out the front door and hid them under my spare tire. Rita and Butch were too preoccupied with each other to notice my absence. Butch didn't make any more rude comments. He just smirked at me all night, while Rita unsuccessfully tried to maintain a poker face. Some of the other cops smirked along with them, so I guess it was an open secret that they were intimate and I was fool in their small group. Soon I would have my revenge and make them all look like the fools they were to the whole city. Rita told me that the motorcycle racers communicated with marine VHF radios meant for boats. I bought one too. Each night, Rita left out the maps on our kitchen table of where her squad would start their patrol. I drove my car to where Rita would begin her patrol in my Mustang and broadcast on the Marine Band radio to the racers what area. To avoid it drove Rita crazy. Then I sent anonymous letters to the newspaper making fun of the LAPD motorcycle squad chasing us in response. The LAPD allowed the newspaper to interview Rita, who promised to bring down this reckless group of road devils. She was her career on the line, and she knew it. The brass liked the idea of having a woman as a sacrificial lamb if things didn't work out. It was their woke way of saving face if things went south. I also listened in to the police on their band which was impossible to crack if you didn't have one of their encrypted walkie-talkies. I used that information also to warn the racers on the Marine Band radio. She assumed that she and her men were being followed by cars who warned the bikers. For 3 Saturday nights in a row, she was thwarted, and her boss was giving her a hard time because the press was leaning on him while visiting her at the police station. I hid a tiny GPS tracker in Butch's fuel tank where it would never be discovered. It gave me another level of tracking her squad and foiling them until the battery died at home. R was pretty shook up. She knew her career rested on making some arrests. She didn't understand how they could stay 3 steps ahead of her. She even suspected that someone on the squad was betraying her. Naturally, I suggested that Butch might be the culprit since he was her second in command and would gain all the praise and promotions if he replaced her and stopped the races. Finally, I had enough of my passive aggression. My work on Shockwave was complete, and after Rita left for her patrol, I took out my bike at 2 a.m. and raced from I-10 to the I-405 at triple digits. I listened to the police band radio as the LAPD helicopter spotted me and followed me. I did a wheelie and turned on my laser disruptor so he couldn't get an accurate speed fix on me. My wife. Squad was about 10 mil or 15 away at the top of the Sepulveda Pass, leaving the San Fernando Valley, and tried to catch up, but they couldn't. I was too fast for them. All the while, the helicopter followed my trail, giving them detailed directions. To help them catch the demonic rider on the black motorcycle, I had planned for that, and turned off the white lights and turned on the infrared ones before I exited the freeway at Century Boulevard next to the airport. Helicopters were forbidden. To fly in LAX airport airspace for safety reasons, he lost me. And I stepped a gate and drove into an airport garage. I listened over the radio to the frustration of the chopper pilot and Rita curse as they had no idea where I was. I was really enjoying this. I had previously parked my Mustang in that garage, and I removed the black rubber panels from my bike and hid them in the Mustang's trunk. Now my bike appeared in its natural red color. It was not the bike they were looking for, just like those droids. An hour later I left. I spotted the police squad stopping motorcycles, but not my Mustang. I took particular pride in seeing the frustration on Rita's face as I crawled past her at a perfectly legal speed. She returned home early. In the morning, on the verge of tears, I chose not to comfort her. Rita placed 2 of her command at 2 entrances to the airport to stop me from trying that trick again. So I didn't. I did it at the Van Nuys airport. I made a fool of her for 3 consecutive Saturdays. I stopped on the 4th Saturday only because of a downpour racing in the rain, or fog as a pact with suicide one night. I hid the bike under a freeway overpass in a large cardboard box. I had pre-positioned there that afternoon. I silently laughed as I watched through a hole in the box as Rita, Butch, and some others raced past. My signature move was to perform a wheelie. As I jammed their lasers, I sent a letter to the local newspaper bragging about the racers and LAPD's secret incompetent hire female who led squad that failed to stop us. I signed the letter. The Sundance Kid. I decided to stop pressing my luck and ended my Saturday night excursions, but not before she was demoted and Butch replaced her, which ended their tour. Love affair. She blamed him for somehow sabotaging her position and leaking the news to the press. She was crestfallen and returned home that night, seeking comfort in my arms. But I wasn't interested. I told her I knew of her affair with Butch and I moved out that day. She didn't cry or try to change my mind. She said it was all my fault because I was just a boring school teacher and she was an adrenaline junkie who couldn't stay with a tedious nerd like me. She poured herself a shot glass of Kentucky bourbon, I guess, out of some residual love. I told her it was time for her to join AA before she died. In a drunken crash, she just gave me the finger as I left. I could live with myself, because at least I tried to get it to dry out. It was June, the school year was over, and I resigned and moved to Las Vegas, where I got a job as a wrench for a motorcycle dealership, and temporarily moved in with my sister Elle. I loved working on high-performance bikes and wringing a few extra horsepower from them. I sent copies of the X-rated videos of Rita and Butch to their bosses and Butch's wife. They weren't fired, but each was demoted, and Butch divorced 12 months later after sleeping with half of the motorcycle cops in her precinct and 6 months of AA meetings. Rita contacted me claiming remorse and that she missed me thanks to her newfound sobriety. I agreed to meet her in Las Vegas at a McDonald's parking lot at exactly high noon. I was a block away when I saw her waiting outside of her car. I put down the dark sun visor on my helmet and did a wheelie on Shockwave in front of her, then sped away. She recognized the bike and the wheelie. A few minutes later she phoned me. She now understood that I was the one who destroyed her career and made a fool out of her. I feigned ignorance and apologized for being a little late as I pulled up in my Mustang. "You're that damn midnight rider from Law," she shouted. "You up my career," she screamed. "I'll have you arrested and thrown in jail for..." What I replied. "Playing dumb." I silently shrugged my shoulders. "I'm just a cowardly nerd like you and Butch called me when you were both screwing in her bed. I don't know what you're talking about. Do you have any evidence?" She realized that, once again, I outsmarted her as I slipped through her fingers. Like dry sand on a hot beach, she kicked her front driver's side tire. She took a deep breath, and she got control of her temper. She could no longer hide from the truth of her life. Finally aware of her inability to prosecute me, she whispered, "I know now that I let the drinking go away too far. I loved you." Then she paused in my own way. "Why did you do that to me? Because if you loved or cared about me even a little, you would have just broken up with me instead of cheating with Butch in our bed. Why did you cheat on me? I've been working on that in a way and with the police force shrink." Finally, another glimmer of honesty came out as Rita confronted her demons. "It wasn't just you. It's always been my nature to cheat on every guy I've cared about. I don't really know why. I guess I'm just like my mother. It's who I am. Having both of you is perfect for me. Why couldn't you be happy with 100% of my love? 80% of the time? I guess I'm just old-fashioned," I responded. Rita tried to tee me. As she walked away, she said, "You'll never again have a woman like me. I sure hope not," I replied and rode away in my Mustang. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.